Good afternoon, everyone, and we're going to go ahead and get started. I just want to say thank you for joining us this week for our coffee break with the Food and Families team. We've really enjoyed these topics over the last few weeks. Today we have Lorna. She is our SDSU Extension Family Resource Management Field Specialist. She works with consumers across the state of South Dakota to help them increase their knowledge and implement behaviors to better manage their resources. Her programs focus on youth personal finance, college students' financial wellness, and educate adults about emerging consumer finance issues. So with that said, Lorna, you can take it away.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. I am excited to have a chance to talk with everybody today. If you have questions, please just type them into the chat. The main thing I'm going to talk about today are the way the federal government has been able to assist consumers in helping them with their finances. As you all know, with the health crisis, it has created a financial crisis for a lot of people with job losses, reduced hours. I altered summer employment for some people if they were planning to work in a Parks and Rec or a summer camp or anything like that. Those have all changed, or everybody is kind of in limbo right now with that. So income maybe have changed a little bit, and maybe your expenses have changed somewhat too because we're staying home. I know I've heard a lot of things on the news about people are spending less money on entertainment and going out to eat and some things like that, but they're spending a lot more money on grocery shopping. And I have been able to not get sucked into all of the emails that I get from all the retailers that are having really great sales on stuff right now. So hopefully, I mean, that can maybe be a problem for some people. I just quickly delete it. So I just don't even go to the website to look at it. But so things are in flux, not kind of in all areas of our life. So today I'm going to talk about money and finances. And I think you've probably heard in multiple places that if you want to be able to focus on some things that you have some control over. So we don't have any control over how long the situation is going to last. We don't have control over maybe like when we'll be able to go back to work, or when we'll be able to reopen a business, or when our regular paycheck will start coming in. But what we can do is really focus on the things we have some control over. So that's really just paying attention to what your expenses are, paying attention, knowing what your income is going to be, and being able to look ahead a little bit to understand maybe where there might be a gap or a shortfall between your expenses and your income. So I guess before I get started with some of the content that I was going to cover, I think it's really important that we all just look at our budget or look at our expenses and just be able to see where it is that we're sitting, and really just be cognizant of that aspect of our life, because we can make the decisions about how we're going to spend our finances. So you've probably all heard about the CARES Act, and the most probably significant thing for all consumers is the stimulus payment that you're going to get. But I was just reminded I have some polling questions. So I'm going to ask those polling questions first. And I just need to make my screen a little bigger so those show up. All right. So my first polling question is, how confident are you in your understanding of how the CARES Act can support you financially? So just, if you're able, just click on very confident, confident, somewhat confident, or not at all confident. Okay, I'll give you about 15 more seconds. All right. So the predominant, we just have a few number on the call, so the responses might not be statistically significant, but somewhat confident is where we kind of fall in that. So I'm going to talk about some aspects of the CARES Act, but make sure that you ask questions. Just put those in the chat if you have if what I'm talking about is not real clear, or you have maybe a specific situation you want to ask about. All right, my next question is, I'm going to talk about the economic stimulus payment. So my question for you is, what do you plan to do with the funds that you receive from the economic stimulus payment? And this is set up so that you can just select one answer. So either pay bills, save for an emergency, pay debt. You won't receive the funds, which is the case for some individuals, or you haven't really thought about it yet. Okay, I'll give you about 10 seconds. If you haven't responded yet. Well, I'm happy to see that all of you that are on this call have thought about it, because nobody selected haven't thought about it. Most of you are going to save for an emergency or pay for bills. All right, and I have one last question for you. This question is just yes or no. Have you changed how you manage your finances since the start of the COVID-19 situation? So have you made any changes? All right, about 10 more seconds. All right, so we're split a little bit here, with majority of you saying you haven't changed anything. So hopefully that is a good thing, because you haven't needed to change the situation. So good. Thanks for responding to those questions for me. So to get started here, and just another reminder, pop in questions as you have them. Megan's going to help me out with making a note if there is a question and I don't necessarily address it right away. So first of all, with the CARES Act stimulus payments, what I'm going to talk about first. We're to the point where if you had direct deposit set up with the IRS, you should have received that payment. Some information I've received is that by April 20th, which was yesterday, everyone who had direct deposit set up should have received that payment. I have direct deposit set up, but have not received the payment yet. But I also didn't go into the website until later last week to check and see if I had direct deposit set up, and I didn't. So then I made sure that was set up. So I'm just kind of checking it periodically. So anyway, if you did not have direct deposit set up and you will then be receiving a paper check, unfortunately, especially if you need the finances now, the paper checks are not going to be sent out until, they're not going to start mailing those until May. So from May to September is when they're going to be mailing those. So this is one thing to keep in mind if you have lost your job or your income is not what it was and you're really counting on those funds. If you don't have direct deposit set up, then it's going to take a little bit to get those funds. So I am gonna pop a URL into the chat. And Megan, this is one I didn't give to you, so that's why I'll do it. And this has, if you don't have, or if you just even want to check and haven't received the check and want to check and see where it is or what your status is, you can go to this website, and there's a button on that website that you can click on to just to check and see what your status is on your payment. And if you haven't set up direct deposit, you can set up direct deposit from that spot. So if you normally receive a tax refund, you probably have it set up. I don't normally receive a tax refund, which is why mine was not set up. So just to review, for if you are single, and this is all based on your 2019 federal income taxes, your adjusted gross income. If you filed 2019, if you didn't get your 2019 filed, then this information will be based on your 2018 tax return. But it's all based on adjusted gross income. So if you filed single and your adjusted gross income is under $75,000, you are going to receive $1,200. There are income thresholds. So if you're single and your income is between $75,000 and $99,000, then for every $100 that your income increases from $75,000, your stimulus payment will be reduced by $5. If you go to the website, you can just check and see what your payment will be, but that's just kind of the rationale. If you file single and you make more than $99,000, then you won't receive anything. For if you are married filing jointly, then you will receive $2,400. The threshold is $150,000 to $198,000. And then if you are head of household, the threshold is $112,500 up to $136,500. And if you have a child that's under the age of 17, so by December 31st, 2019, they were 16, then you will receive $500 per child. And essentially what that is, everyone who has a child under the age of 17 receives a $500 child tax credit. And so essentially this $500 is paying you back for that child tax credit. So that's how to look at that. Now, I work with a recent college graduate. She's an AmeriCorps VISTA serving this year with me and SDSU Extension. And because she graduated from college last spring, so May of 2019, she was still considered a dependent on her parents' income tax for 2019. And so even though she is a young professional who would probably really benefit from the stimulus payment, that is a group of people that are sort of kind of left out of this the stimulant payment situation. So she alerted me of that because she's very on top of things and checked into it right away. And she was a little upset about it, but that's kind of how it worked out with that. So that is kind of the income threshold. I've given you some information about when you would be expecting those. If anybody has any more questions about that stimulus payment, just let me know. And then the next thing that is a benefit for anyone who has student loans, federal student loans, make sure I preface that. There is a suspension on your student loan payment until September 30th, 2020. And this also then, your interest rate is also reduced to 0% until that same date. What's nice is that you as a borrower or a holder of one of those loans, you don't have to do anything. It's going to happen automatically. And if you have checked your loan servicer, logged into your loan to the loan servicer website, you've probably seen notifications about kind of the status of your loan. I checked on one today, and it indicated that even though we're dropping to 0%, no interest will accrue on your loan for the 6-month time period. And this all started as of March 13th. They're not going to change what's listed as your interest rate. Just know that no interest will be accruing. Also, your payment and the payment due date will also not change. It'll still be listed. So just know that no payments will be removed, or no payments will be due until October. But then starting in October, unless something changes between now and then, you'll be responsible for making those loan payments. So what's nice is that as a borrower, you're going to save the money on that interest rate. You can still make payments if you want to make sure that you keep that up and you're still able to do that. You can continue making those payments. Just know that most of that payment will go towards your principal rather than interest and principal. And just a note, if you do have accrued interest on your loan, if you make a payment, that it'll pay the accrued interest first and then start on the principal. So that's maybe just for this, if you make a payment this first month, then the rest of the payments will be principal only. So in a way, it's a nice way to help reduce the amount of interest that you're accruing now, but then also in the future, maybe shorten the life of your loan a little bit. If you don't make any payments over the next 6 months, you just be aware that your loan will then extend 6 months. So if the terms were, if your term was up in 18 months, after the 6 months time period, that 18 months will start from 6 months. So 18 plus 24, so it'll be 24 months with that. So just to kind of be aware of that. This is for federally backed loans only. So loans that are from the Department of Education, and it applies to those direct, subsidized, and unsubsidized loans. It also applies to Perkins loans that are backed by or loaned by the Department of Education. Some Perkins loans are through the university that you attended or maybe are currently attending, and those loans do not apply. Couple of things: if you are in the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program or the Income-Driven Repayment Plan, the suspended payments will count towards your requirement. So for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, you need to make 120 payments, so 10 years monthly payments. So by not making payments these 6 months, these 6 months will apply to those 120 payments. Same with the income-driven plan. So just know that that's nice. That's a nice benefit for you if you're in that situation. And from as far as I know, I haven't heard anything different. Your loan will not be recalculated, or your payment won't be recalculated, so that you would have to make a different amount of a payment. Best thing to do is to make sure that you go to your loan servicer website, make sure that your all the information is accurate, and then contact your loan servicer if you do have any questions about that. This does not apply to private loans. So maybe a private student loan that you had through a bank or local bank. But if you are struggling with making that loan payment, for anything, not just for student loans, but for any type of payments, contact the loan servicer or whoever the creditor, whoever the money is owed to, and just ask if there's any assistance, anything that you can do to maybe reduce the loan for a certain amount of time, just to help you out through this time period. If you don't ask, you won't know. You are responsible for making all of your payments and paying all of your bills. So make sure that you just are on top of those things. And it's also really important to make sure that you ask sooner rather than later. Don't wait until after the payment due date has passed, you want to try to get ahead of the curve and make sure that you make contact in advance. So Megan has posted a website for studentaid.gov in the chat box. So if you have other questions, you can go to that website and get that information. All right, so another thing that the CARES Act has helped people out with is if those of you who are unemployed. And with unemployment in the Department of Labor, the federal government has determined a benefit of $600 for a weekly payment and through July 31st. This is in addition to the payment that you would receive from your unemployment. The Department of Labor, South Dakota Department of Labor has, you can go to their website, and Megan will post that website in the chat box here in a couple seconds, and to get all the information you need to know. Be aware though that they are pretty overwhelmed with the questions and the applications. So I would go to the website to see if you can get some questions answered. And then if you do need to make contact with them, just be patient when you're making those phone calls, because there's a lot of people that are making those phone calls. Another thing is the Department of Labor has a Facebook page, and they have been posting quite a bit of information that is really helpful for consumers. So if you are a Facebook user, I encourage you to just click on or like the Department of Labor Facebook page so that you can get some regular updates on things that are happening for them. So if you have lost your job due to the coronavirus situation, you are eligible to apply for unemployment benefits. What your benefit will be, there's a formula that's used to determine the benefit. And I'll just kind of briefly give it to you just because I have it in my notes, but it's based on your highest earning quarter over the last year, and then it is divided by 26 and then capped at the maximum amount. So the maximum amount is going to vary depending on the state. As I was getting ready for this call today, I was going to go check what the maximum amount is, but I forgot to do that. So I'm sure that information is posted on the website. So the most important thing, takeaway from unemployment, is to know that if you've lost your primary job because of the coronavirus, then you are eligible for unemployment. In some cases, they've extended this to maybe some secondary jobs or side hustles that you might have. And so the best thing to do is to check the Department of Labor website to see where you fit in regard to that. The next topic that is addressed under the CARES Act is housing. And so there's a benefit for both renters and for individuals who have home mortgages. Probably the most important thing to know is that during this time, landlords are restricted from evicting you if you're not able to pay rent, if the landlord has a federally backed mortgage for the property. So that can be a little confusing, and it's not going to apply to absolutely every situation. So the most important thing is, if your landlord hasn't talked to you about this, is that you ask your landlord what the situation is in terms of their, if they have a mortgage for the property. If they don't have a mortgage, then this doesn't apply. Some federally backed mortgages are mortgages from HUD, VA, USDA, Fannie Mae, or Freddie Mac, and then also public housing. So if you are renting and the mortgage for the property that you are renting from falls under and meets these requirements, then the landlord is restricted from evicting you. Now, if this doesn't fit your situation and you're struggling to be able to pay your rent, you just need to talk to your landlord and see see what their situation is and what they can do to help you out. So once again, the most important thing to do is to make sure you know what your finances are, what your financial situation is, and then be able to talk to someone who can help you make decisions, and to do it sooner rather than later. If you hold a federally backed mortgage and check with your lender to determine whether or not you have a federally backed mortgage, if you don't know. In some cases, your primary lender, maybe a bank, does have their loans backed, federally backed. So you may not see that on your loan information, but that is the case. If you are not able to make payments, the lender cannot foreclose for 60 days starting March 18th. And any foreclosure procedures that may have been started cannot be finalized also during this time period. So once again, with your mortgage payments, if you're struggling to be able to make those mortgage payments, contact your lender and see what situation and kind of what falls into the situation for you. Always keep in mind, though, that with your mortgage payment, it includes the principal and the interest on your loan, but it also includes your escrow, so your insurance and your taxes. So it may be that you would have to pay a portion of it that would have to go to those insurance and taxes, just so that is taken care of, and then they'll make arrangements with making the principal and interest payment. Once again, every situation is going to be different, so make sure you talk to your lender about that. And then just some other tips. That's kind of real briefly the CARES Act. I do have a link to the actual document, and I was told it was 850 pages. I chose to take that person's word for it, and I'm not going to actually go read it. That person I got that information from did a really good job of kind of summarizing things. But so there is a lot of information, and for a while things were changing in terms of what was true and accurate. So the links that Megan has put in the chat are some good resources that have accurate information and the information is kept up to date, so that you know that it's that it's going to be correct information. All right, so a couple other things is we have on our extension website, if you have been on our last 2 weeks of coffee breaks, I know you've been drawn to our extension website. We have a lot of information related to how to handle this situation with the COVID-19. There are, in terms of personal finance or financial management information, I have some articles about some of the things that I've talked about today, excuse me. And, but there's also information about a variety of other topics too. So a couple other things. What I am trying to stress for everybody, and I'm practicing this myself, is making sure that I know what my financial situation is. I am very lucky that both my husband and I are able to work from home, and so our income has not been interrupted. Our expenses have changed a little bit just because of not having to do or not being able to do a few things. But just still, I just have been looking at where what things I need to do, keeping tabs on some of the information that I've covered with you today, just for my personal benefit. So, so there's no surprises. One of the beginning questions that I asked about is related to what you're going to do with your stimulus payment if you receive it. And right now, whether or not you receive that stimulus payment or not, that'll be really nice for a lot of people. Those 3 things that are recommended. First of all, make sure that you're able to pay your bills. If you're not able to make those payments, then talk to the creditors or the lenders and see what arrangements can be made, so that until you can get things back on your feet and things are normal. I say normal, but we all know that, as everybody said, it's going to be a new normal. But keep in mind, though, that you're still going to have to make those payments It may be a case where you don't make payments for a couple of months, but then you'll have to start making those payments again. And so then your payment might increase a little bit. So just being able to plan ahead for that so that you're still able to make those payments in a few months down the road. The other is to take care of debt. What's discouraged is making extra payments on things like your mortgage, car payments, on student loans and those types of things, with the exception of being able to continue your payments in addressing just your principal. The reason for that is because you want to be able to keep as much liquid cash as possible in case some emergencies come up, in case you need to go to the doctor, and in case there's a bill that needs to be taken care of that was unexpected, in case maybe your car breaks down and you need to get a repair on that. But what is encouraged is to try to reduce your consumer debt. So things like your credit card is probably the best example of consumer debt, because depending on how you use your credit card, it may be creating a lot of stress for you to have that bill. So if you're able to stop using your credit card during this time period and make payments in order to be able to reduce the amount of debt, that's going to help you out, especially if the situation continues a lot longer than, well, because we don't know how long it's going to continue. So if you're able to reduce that debt so it's not as much of a burden, then that might help alleviate some of the stress to be able to handle some other situations. But only make that commitment to reducing that debt if you're able to. And then the third thing is to save. So if you do have some savings from your regular expenses and your, maybe your debt payments are taken care of, like I just suggested, and you still have a little bit extra money each month, just try to put that into savings. It's encouraged that consumers have 3 to 6 months of non-discretionary expenses in savings. So the amount of money each month that you need to pay all of your basic bills is times 3 or 6 is what should be in your emergency savings. And if you don't have much in an emergency savings, if you say you get the stimulus check, maybe split it up and put $1,000 in savings, and then the difference make some other additional payments on that consumer debt, if possible. In most cases, $500 to $1,000 in an emergency savings can address any unexpected emergency that comes up. So if you're just trying to really watch your expenses, we all know that we can't plan for absolutely everything, and so we don't know what's going to come up in terms of some of those expenses. So if we have a little bit set aside, that maybe alleviates a little bit of our financial stress. So let's see here. A couple of other notes that I have is to review your income and expenses and see where you might have a gap. Cancel any services that you're not able to use right now. So one example is if you have a membership to a gym and the gym is closed and you can't get there, then possibly cancel it for the time being, so those funds aren't being, that you're not spending that money. I know it's really, really nice to be able, because we're home so much, maybe you're watching more movies, things like that. But if you have some streaming services that you're just not really using, then maybe cut out one of them and streamline that a little bit. But just as you look at your expenses, see what you have and what, if there's anything that you can cancel. Another important thing is during this time is to be aware of scams. Every time something new related to money occurs, there's a new scam that happens. And remember that the IRS will never call you or email you or text you to get information from you. They will always send you an official letter. So if you receive any calls, emails, or text messages from someone that says they're the IRS and you owe money, know that that's a scam. And in any other cases too, if you have individuals, even if it's related to maybe a bank account, and someone calls and says that, you know, you need to make a payment on your credit card, or you'll be turned over to collections, a bank is not going to call you for that information. So always just be hesitant when anyone makes contact with you regarding a financial issue. There are, you can just Google popular scams and find out kind of what's happening right now. But as soon as the coronavirus really ramped up in the United States, there was the scam list went off the charts with that. And let's see, I guess that's all I have. It doesn't look like there's been any questions in the chat box, but if anybody has any, I'll just take a minute to go ahead and enter those. Or if you want to unmute yourself, you sure can do that and then just ask the question. All right, so while you're thinking, I do have a couple more polling questions. Oh, anything for self-employed in tourism business? Can you be a little more specific, Karen, with that question? There is the small business loan program, but last I heard those funds had been expended, and the federal government was looking at maybe increasing the amount of those funds. I know the Governor's Office of Economic Development, if you go to that website or just search for that, the Governor's Office of Economic Development here in South Dakota, self-employed with no employees. I'm not on top of the small business aspect of the financial situation, but if you go to that website, the Governor's Office of Economic Development, I do know that the governor has set up a loan program for small businesses, and I would check and see if there's information on that site related to your situation. Or another resource that I'm going to give to you is, yep, Megan just put that in the website in the chat box. Another resource we do have in Extension, we have Community Vitality Field Specialists, and they work in communities with small businesses. So Peggy Schlechter is one of the field specialists who works with small businesses. And Megan, if you'd be able to put her email address in. Okay, so Karen, you applied for the governor's grant when it first came out. So I would check with Peggy and see if she has any more information, because she works with small business owners. So I'm really sorry that I couldn't give you anything more with that. I know in South Dakota, because we're such a high tourism state, we're really going to see, I would say, in the fall and like the next 9 to 12 months, the impact of the tourism industry, which is really, really unfortunate, because that's such an important industry for many of our smaller communities in South Dakota. It's also important for a lot of people with just summer employment too, and even their livelihood. So I'm hoping that there is a lot of support for you. I do know we as Extension we hosted a Weathering the Storm for Small Businesses webinar a week or two ago. Kind of my weeks are blending into one, so I forget how long ago it was. And we are going to record that and have that available on our website for anyone to view. And so we do have somebody from the Governor's Office of Economic Development that will be able to he's going to provide some information about resources that are available. So hopefully that'll be helpful too. All right, I'm going to pop up another poll here. I'll get this right. All right, so this is kind of an end of the session poll to see if the information I provided for you made any difference in how confident you feel about the CARES Act. So this is the same question that I asked initially. How confident are you in your understanding of how the CARES Act can support you financially? So go ahead and just type or click on your response. So see if there's more information. Looks like we've learned a little bit. That's good. That's good. I know that every time I read about the CARES Act or read the information that I get provided, things make a little bit more sense, and I'm able to understand kind of how it's really going to impact us and myself too overall. All right, and then one last question. All right, so this question is similar to one that I asked at the beginning, but after this session, have you changed how you plan to use the funds that you'll receive from the economic stimulus payments? And maybe you haven't, and that's okay, but everybody had a plan initially, so this is really a little bit more directed to if you didn't have a plan or hadn't really thought about it before we got started. All right, looks like I can end it. So no is the predominant answer, that's fine, that's good. All right, any more questions that I can address? We have about 15 minutes left, so if you have questions or comments, or even if you had a question about something that I didn't address, if you'd like to ask that. So Karen, I pay my taxes with direct deposit online, so I did not think I had to do anything to get my stimulus check. You do, actually, because that's what I do. I pay my taxes with direct deposit, and then I realized that, so I checked, and I did need to include my bank information. So if you can go back, let's see, Megan, maybe if you could pop in that, the first, or the link that I posted. Oh, I guess I can do it. Sorry, I'll do it. This link, because I don't remember if you were on, if you go to this link, just click on it. That is where you can set up your direct deposit if it's not set up, or you can just kind of check the status. But yeah, because based on my husband's job, we pay quarterly taxes, and so we usually pay taxes in April. And so I thought, well, I don't know. I just checked because I wasn't sure what it was, and you do have to check on that. So anything else?
Lorna, this is Chris Rinksmeyer.
Hi, Chris.
I live in the Winter area, and my question is a little bit on the fringe of financial management, but we probably all heard, the governor say about applying for reemployment insurance, and people who have never had to do that before, what a hard time that was for them navigating the system. Well, my in regular time volunteer job is at a thrift store with a community food bank. And we have been really blessed with some good donations that were easy to manage. The venison from the hunters, that provide the processing for that. And I also understand that Feeding South Dakota is coming to our community to have a pre-packaged drop box. We've been handling, the manager of our food bank has been just asking people to call and leave a message. But one of the things we've kind of informally talked about in our little coffee groups that we've had, or phone calls, is that people who might not have had to apply for unemployment before might not have had to seek assistance from a food bank or something like that. And I just wondered if you had any suggestions about being respectful of offering those suggestions or providing some things for families without that they might not be familiar with the whole situation. They might be feeling embarrassed. They might not know really, with having to homeschool their kids or whatever all they're needing to do, how to take advantage. I think there's going to be some things that are going to be ongoing. I did hear the Feeding South Dakota project. You don't have to be a resident of our county. So that kind of gives a little bit different aspect of that. So if you have heard anything or can share anything, I'd really appreciate it.
Well, I haven't necessarily heard anything, but I would say, I agree with you. There's probably families who have moved into that situation where they're needing to seek out resources who under normal circumstances wouldn't have. And because there's, in some cases, there's stigma associated with receiving those resources, it can be hard emotionally and just kind of everything with getting that. So initially, I would guess that your organization is always very open and welcoming to anyone who comes to get the resources. So I would say just continue with that. But then maybe if you're able to do some advertising or marketing, do a push that just indicates that everyone is welcome, that there's no income limit or requirement, that you don't sign up for anything. I've helped with some Feeding Brookings locations, and I know that anybody who comes is able to receive the resources. So if maybe you just advertise it in a way that it's clear that no matter what, everyone is welcome to receive these resources. They're available to us. We want to make sure everybody gets them, and that it doesn't matter what your income level is, you're able to receive that. And then if those of you who are volunteers, if you know of situations where there's families who could use the resources, and if you feel comfortable, obviously keeping in mind with kind of the distancing and how close you can get to people, but maybe even just kind of going into smaller communities and checking to see if there's anyone who could use the resources but maybe didn't come and get the resources, or
I don't know all the rules yet about from what I've heard, it sounds like Feeding South Dakota is going to require a household name or something, some type of identifier. I know that was kind of one of the things that we talked about, that, early on in this whole situation, I know that the governor had kind of put a call out for people keeping in touch with or checking with people in your churches and that kind of thing. And we are, our thrift store food pantry is actually managed by our ministerial association. So we have that component, but it's, we won't be able to pick up for those people. So we have a little bit of time to do some calling and see if we can encourage some people. I like the idea of everyone being welcome. I think I'll be sure and share that, and that you don't have to necessarily do an application or income. Like, I'm sure people have heard about what you have to do when you come to the food pantry, and even if their situation is a little stringent, they may not feel comfortable thinking that they want to provide that, or their situation is different, so they don't think they should provide that.
I would say if you just use good communication to let people know that anyone can come and get the resources. I like that your thrift store works with the ministerial association, because that's another good way too. With your faith-based organizations might have individuals in those organizations or in those congregations who can maybe check with people to see who might need the resources. And I know from my experience when I've worked with a group here in Brookings, is like the individuals, you can't pick up for another family. You just have to pick up for your family. But yeah, just making sure that it's a welcoming place. So I don't know, Megan, do you have anything more that you could add, since because you work more in that area of food than I do?
No, I don't. But the resources, the services across the state have really stepped up to provide, food options for all, whether that be kids, schools, food pantries. They're there for a reason. So I encourage anybody and everybody to go out and use them, and to ask questions if you have questions, and we can always look into those answers.
The hardest part for us is that we still have to keep our doors closed. So we're serving needs on an individual basis. And in our small community, it's really hard to buy clothes and shoes for kids. And, we've been going on here for a couple months now. So I imagine, we could go into a lot of different areas, but I know that the managers and a few people have gone in to pack food packages and clothing if there been an immediate need or that kind of thing. But it's hard. It's a hard situation. Wanting to be respectful, but knowing how to handle it in a kind way.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and I would guess even with because you can't let a lot of people into, and you're kind of working individually, that helps too. Especially, if individuals want some privacy and that kind of thing. But, you've brought up some good things, Chris, with like everything is changing. So kids are continuing to grow, and in smaller communities where you maybe don't have the retail stores where you can go buy new clothes, buy summer clothes, and things like that, and the thrift stores are closed. Yeah, what are families going to be able to do other than purchase things online? But that isn't necessarily always feasible for everybody. But like the longer we're in this, the more things are going to come up with us having to rethink how we're going to do it. So yeah, it's interesting.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So as we wrap up here, I just want to let everybody know that, as Megan said, I'm the Family Resource Management Field Specialist for SDSU Extension. I am also an accredited financial counselor, and so I can provide one-on-one financial counseling to anyone. And through SDSU Extension, it's all available for free. So if anyone, if you or anyone needs anything, like just looking over their finances to see where they can make some changes, or being able to look at making some adjustments, or how to stretch things out, and over the next couple of months, even if they're looking at even anything more in depth than just looking at your budget and your expenses and your income. I can help individuals with that. And I would say that you have my email address, but I'm going to type it into the chat box. Feel free to share that with anyone that just might have a question, and we can meet either online, back and forth through emails, or phone calls too. So whichever is convenient for anyone else. So, well, if we don't have any more questions, I want to thank you guys for taking some time today to hang out with us. Hopefully you all had something good to drink. I've been into loose leaf tea lately, so I'm getting my fill on that, so that I'm not drinking caffeinated beverages all day long. So I'm enjoying that. Megan, what's our topic for next week? Do you know what it is? I should have looked before I started.
Yes. So Andrea Bornstead and Audrey Ryder, they are going to be talking on the topic of mental health. So stay tuned, and that you'll be able to register for that link in the upcoming events. But yes, we have mental health, and then healthy at home, and then our last one is local foods.
Okay, so Matt just put in the chat, the topic is finding balance amidst chaos. Andrea is our mental health extension specialist, And Audrey is our child development field specialist. And so that should be good information. And Matt's just on top of it. He's got the link there in the chat too. So hopefully you can make some time to join us next week. And even if you register and aren't able to join us, we're recording. So we'll send a follow-up link and to the recording, and you can always watch it a little bit later. Make sure if you have some specific questions, to add those when you register, and then Andrea and Audrey will make sure that they address those. So that's all I've got for today. Enjoy the day. The wind has died down here in Brookings so that we can actually go for a decent walk with my dogs and not lose them. So hopefully enjoy the rest of the day. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me anytime. Thank you.